The night was colder than usual, and the wind outside the border terminal carried a strange silence, one of those silences that make even the guards stand a little straighter. It was almost closing time when a young man stepped forward from the dimly lit waiting area, carrying nothing but a small black backpack and a passport pressed tightly in his hand. He walked slowly, quietly, like someone trying not to disturb the air around him. From a distance, he looked calm, maybe too calm, but the truth hidden in his passport was about to change everything. His name, at least the one written on the cover, was Daniel. He was in his late 20s, dressed in a simple gray jacket with the collar turned up, trying to hide his face from the cameras overhead. Travelers walked past him without noticing anything unusual, but if someone had watched closely, they would have seen the stiffness in his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided every uniform in sight, and how tightly he held that passport. It was as if his entire life was trapped inside those thin pages, and he knew the second he handed it over, the truth could explode. A loud announcement echoed through the hall, making him flinch. Final processing for tonight begins now. People rushed forward, but Daniel stayed behind, breathing slowly, trying to calm the storm inside his chest. He had crossed borders before, but this time was different. This time, the risk was real. He kept telling himself, just stay normal, walk quietly, don't draw attention. But the more he tried to act natural, the more his thoughts raced. His heart beat so fast he felt it in his throat. The guard at Counter 7 was known for his sharp eyes and strict mood. Officer Kareem, a man who never smiled, never joked, and never missed a detail. Tonight, he looked extra alert, as if he was waiting for someone. Daniel looked at him and felt a chill run through his spine. He thought about switching counters, but it was too late. A woman behind him nudged his shoulder, telling him to move ahead. The line pushed him forward until he stood directly in front of the officer. Passport. Officer Kareem said, without looking up. For a moment, Daniel couldn't move. His fingers froze around the tiny booklet. When he finally placed it on the counter, he felt as if he had just put down the weight of his entire past. Kareem opened the passport, slowly, almost too slowly, flipping through the pages with a patience that felt dangerous. Daniel's eyes followed every movement, searching for even the smallest reaction on the officer's face. But Kareem's face was unreadable. The scanner beeped once. Then again, the second beep was longer, lower, and instantly made Daniel's stomach drop. That sound wasn't normal. He had heard it before years ago, during a moment he had tried to forget. It was the sound that warned officers when something inside the document didn't match the system records. Maybe it was a mismatch in details. Maybe an old travel stamp. Or maybe something much worse. Kareem slowly lifted his eyes, and in that moment, Daniel felt exposed, like someone had pulled the ground from beneath him. The officer stared at him with a calm but piercing expression. Is this your passport? He asked. The question was simple, but the tone, WASN, single quotes, T. Daniel nodded, forcing a small smile. Yes, of course. Kareem flipped back to the first page and tapped his finger on the photo. You look different here. Daniel's throat tightened. A lot of people say that I lost weight, grew a beard. You know, life changes people. But Kareem didn't blink. Behind Daniel. The line grew longer, and impatient voices murmured. Someone coughed. Someone shuffled their papers. But Daniel heard none of it. All he could hear was the pounding inside his own head. Kareem typed something into his system. Daniel felt his palms grow sweaty. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly, just for a split second. But Daniel caught it. Something wasn't matching. Something wasn't right. And if the officer kept digging, the truth buried inside that passport would finally surface. The truth. Daniel had spent years trying to escape. A soft alarm blinked on the screen, facing only the officer. Daniel couldn't see it, but he noticed the change in Kareem's expression. A small shift. A tightening of the jaw. A sign that the officer had discovered something he shouldn't have. Step aside. Kareem said quietly. The room suddenly felt 10 times smaller. Daniel's breath turned shallow. Is there a problem? Kareem didn't answer. He just gestured again, firmer this time. Step aside. People from the line stared now. Daniel felt heat rising under his skin. He stepped back slowly, feeling the cold floor through his shoes. 2 guards standing near the doorway exchanged a look and began walking toward him. Their footsteps echoed across the hall, heavy, slow, and final. Daniel tried to remain calm. Maybe it's just a system error. Maybe it's nothing. But deep down he knew. He had always known this moment would come. He had just hoped it wouldn't be tonight. One of the guards approached him. Sir, can you come with us for a moment? Daniel swallowed hard. His voice barely came out. Can I at least know what's wrong? The guard hesitated, glanced at Kareem, and then said quietly, there's an issue with your passport record. Daniel froze again. That single sentence hit him harder than any punch. People around him whispered, curious and confused. But Daniel heard only one thing, your passport record. The very thing he feared. The guard stepped closer. Please, this way. Asterisk Daniel looked around the hall at the door he had planned to cross, at the travelers who moved freely past him, at the life he thought he was finally ready to reach. It was all slipping away. He took a deep breath and followed the guard. But inside, his mind was already racing through the secrets he thought he had buried. Asterisk secrets that were no longer buried. Asterisk, as he walked toward the small inspection room, he saw something over the guard's shoulder, something that made his heart stop completely. Asterisk his passport, still on the counter. Asterisk and the officer was staring at the last page. The page that wasn't supposed to exist. The page that held the truth. And just as the door started closing behind Daniel, Officer Kareem looked up, eyes filled with something between shock and suspicion, and said four words that froze Daniel in place. Asterisk, this can't be real. Asterisk, and with that, everything Daniel was trying to hide finally began to surface one detail at a time. Asterisk, the truth was no longer silent. Asterisk, and crossing quietly was no longer an option. Daniel stood frozen as the door closed behind him, leaving only a small click echoing through the narrow room. The walls were gray, the light above him flickered softly, and a faint smell of old paper hung in the air. The guard motioned for him to sit, but Daniel hesitated, unsure whether sitting made him look guilty or calm. Eventually he lowered himself into the cold chair and placed his hands on his knees, trying to stop them from shaking. Asterisk, the guard stood near the door, not saying anything, just watching him. That made Daniel even more uncomfortable. They were waiting. For what? For whom? And what had Officer Kareem seen on that last page? Daniel tried to replay the moment in his mind, but his thoughts felt scattered, like broken pieces of a puzzle he no longer remembered how to fix. Asterisk, he stared at the floor, counting the tiles to slow his heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. But every time he reached 10, the picture of Kareem's shocked face flashed back in his memory. This can't be real. Those words kept repeating themselves like a warning he couldn't escape. Asterisk, a few minutes later, the door opened again. Officer Kareem entered, holding Daniel's passport in his hand only. Now it was placed inside a transparent evidence envelope. That sight alone stole the air from Daniel's lungs. He had hoped they would ask questions casually, maybe let him explain, maybe pretend it was a system glitch. But sealing the passport meant something serious, something official. Asterisk Kareem sat across from him, calm but firm, his eyes studying Daniel's face like he was reading a story only he could understand. We need to clear up some details, he said slowly. Asterisk Daniel nodded, though his voice still refused to cooperate. Asterisk, how long have you been traveling under this name? Kareem asked, tapping the envelope. Asterisk Daniel licked his dry lips. A few years, nothing unusual. I travel for work. Asterisk, what kind of work? Asterisk, freelance technician. Daniel said quickly. Mostly small jobs, fixing equipment, helping companies with old systems. Nothing big. Asterisk Kareem leaned back. Asterisk, the way he said it made Daniel's stomach twist. It wasn't disbelief, but it wasn't acceptance either. It was a tone officers used when they already knew something and were testing whether the other person would admit it. Asterisk Kareem opened a thin file he brought with him. Inside were a few printed pages. He looked at the first one. Where were you 2 years ago? Around late March. Asterisk, Daniel blinked. Why that date? Why that time? He felt like a spotlight had been aimed at a memory he didn't want to revisit. I don't remember exactly. Somewhere in the south. I moved around a lot. Asterisk, that's the problem, Kareem said quietly. Records show this passport was used in 3 different locations that month, on 3 different days, in 2 different countries. Asterisk Daniel's breath caught. Then he forced a laugh, weak and unconvincing. Maybe the system mixed up something. Maybe the stamp. Asterisk, no, Kareem cut him off. We checked manually. Asterisk, a deep silence filled the room again. Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck. He had been careful. He had been so sure no one would ever link anything. He had timed everything, planned every step, but hearing Kareem speak so calmly made him realize something had slipped, something he hadn't noticed, something he thought didn't matter. Asterisk, the guard near the door, shifted his weight, and Daniel felt the room shrinking around him. Asterisk, Kareem leaned forward. Look, I want to give you a chance to explain before we move this to a higher authority. Help me understand what's happening here. Asterisk Daniel looked at him. For a moment, he wanted to tell the truth, or at least a part of it. He wanted to say that he wasn't dangerous, that he wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He wanted to explain everything, but he knew the truth wasn't simple, and it wasn't safe. Asterisk, I lost my old passport once, Daniel said finally. Maybe someone used it. Maybe they tried to. Asterisk, that's not what the system shows. Kareem replied without hesitation. Your biometric check matches the original records. There is no second passport, no duplication. He tapped the envelope again. This one is the only one ever issued to you. Asterisk Daniel felt like the floor disappeared beneath him. The worst part wasn't even the officer's words, it was the calmness behind them. A calmness that came from certainty. Asterisk Kareem flipped to another page. Your last page. It has a note. Something written, then erased. then written again. Are you aware of that? Asterisk. Daniel's breath stopped. He didn't know the note was still visible. It wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be long gone. Asterisk. Kareem narrowed his eyes. It looks like someone tried to remove it but didn't do a very good job. Asterisk. Daniel didn't respond. His throat felt like it was closing. Asterisk. Kareem's next question came more softly, but it carried weight. Daniel, who wrote that note? Asterisk. Daniel looked away. The memory hit him like a wave dart. Heavy, impossible to escape. A small room, a hurried night, a shaky hand writing on the passport, a warning, or maybe a plea. Something he promised himself he would never speak of again. Asterisk. I don't know. Daniel whispered. Asterisk. Kareem didn't believe him. Daniel could see it in his eyes. Asterisk. The officer sighed, closed the file, and stood up. We're running your details through extended screening. Until we get confirmation, you'll need to remain here. Asterisk. Daniel clenched his jaw. How long will that take? Asterisk. Kareem didn't answer. He walked to the door, signaled the guard, and left without looking back. Asterisk. The door closed again, leaving Daniel with a mix of fear and frustration burning in his chest. Minutes turned into hours. The light kept flickering. The air felt heavier each second. He couldn't stop thinking about the note, about what might still be visible on that page, about what Kareem might have understood from it. Asterisk. Every time Daniel closed his eyes, he saw the last line of that message, the part he remembered too clearly, a line that reminded him why he had been running for so long. Asterisk. Outside the room, footsteps passed. Muffled voices exchanged short messages. Papers shuffled. Scanners beeped. Daniel tried to piece together everything that had gone wrong. Maybe it wasn't one mistake. Maybe it was every small choice he had made, every border crossed, every lie told. Maybe the truth had been waiting to catch up with him. Asterisk. The guard eventually brought him a cup of water, placing it silently on the table. Daniel reached for it with shaking hands. His voice finally came out, quiet and tired. Can I ask you something? Asterisk. The guard glanced at him. Depends. Asterisk. Did the officer say anything about the passport? Asterisk. The guard hesitated, then shook his head. Not to me. Asterisk. Daniel nodded, but something in the guard's eyes suggested he knew more, just not enough to speak. Asterisk. Time dragged on, and Daniel stared at the ceiling, remembering the night the note was written, the voice that told him to leave immediately, the smell of fear in the room, the promise he made not to tell anyone. He had always hoped the note had been wiped clean, erased forever, but hope was no match for the sharp eyes of a border officer. Asterisk. A sudden knock echoed through the small room. Daniel jolted upright. The door opened again, and Officer Kareem stepped inside with a different expression, tighter, more controlled, as if he had learned something he shouldn't have. Asterisk. We received partial confirmation, he said, his tone unreadable. Asterisk. Daniel's heart dropped. About what? Asterisk. Kareem held the envelope up gently, almost carefully. About the identity connected to this passport, and the record doesn't match the story you gave. Daniel felt his palms sweat again. What record? He whispered. Asterisk. Kareem looked him straight in the eyes. Someone reported this passport years ago with a warning attached. A warning about the person carrying it. Daniel's breath caught. Now the officer took one slow step closer. Asterisk. And the warning wasn't about danger to others, he said softly. It was about danger to you. Asterisk. Daniel's eyes widened. Confusion mixed with shock. He couldn't breathe for a moment. Asterisk. Kareem continued, lowering his voice even further. Whoever wrote that note, they were trying to protect you from something. Something you still haven't told us. Asterisk. Daniel swallowed hard. His pulse raced. His entire body went numb. Asterisk. What were you running from, Daniel? Kareem asked. Asterisk. The room fell silent. Asterisk. Daniel stared blankly at the officer. Asterisk. Because the truth he never wanted to face was finally knocking on the door. Asterisk. And it wasn't the authorities he feared. It was something far worse. Daniel sat back in the chair, his mind spinning faster than he could control. Danger to him, not to others. Those words echoed endlessly in his head. He had spent years believing the only risk was being caught, being questioned, being exposed. But this was something different, something personal, something far more dangerous than any border officer or immigration check. Asterisk. Officer Kareem didn't leave immediately. He stayed near the door, arms crossed, watching Daniel's every move. Daniel could feel the weight of his gaze. Patient, unflinching. It was a gaze that demanded truth, yet gave nothing in return. The silence stretched, each second heavier than the last. Daniel tried to calm himself, replaying every decision that had led him to this moment. Every border crossed, every city slept in, every contact erased. But it didn't help. The truth had caught up, and it was relentless. Asterisk. What exactly did the note say? Kareem asked finally, voice low, almost cautious. The one in the passport. Asterisk. Daniel's stomach turned. He had memorized the note, but speaking it aloud felt like opening a door that had been sealed for years. He swallowed and forced himself to speak. his voice barely above a whisper. It warned me that someone was watching, that if I stayed, I wouldn't be safe. Kareem's eyes narrowed. And you thought leaving quietly would protect you? Daniel shook his head. I didn't know what else to do. The officer remained silent, but the tension in the room thickened. Daniel could almost feel the note burning inside the envelope on the counter. Invisible but alive, like it carried a piece of his own fear. He realized then that escaping borders, hiding identity, and crossing quietly had never been about the law. It had been about survival. Outside the small room. The corridor buzzed with normal activity, travelers dragging their luggage, officers talking quietly, announcements blaring over the speakers. But none of it touched Daniel. To him, the world had shrunk to this room. To Kareem, to the envelope containing his own life's secrets. Kareem leaned closer, lowering his voice. We've checked all the records. Everything matches except for one discrepancy that doesn't make sense. A gap in your travel history, a few months where your presence isn't recorded anywhere. You told me you moved around a lot, but that period, there's nothing. Daniel's mind raced. He had covered that time carefully. He had believed no one would trace him, but now, it seemed that even small gaps could be dangerous. It wasn't just a missing record. It was a signal, a thread that could unravel everything. Daniel started, but the words stuck. The truth about those months was complicated. He had been hiding somewhere no one was supposed to know. Somewhere that now, even thinking about it, made his stomach tighten. Kareem tilted his head slightly. You're hiding more than you admit. That note. Someone wrote it for a reason. You didn't carry it by accident. There's a story here, Daniel, and it's bigger than a simple passport check. Daniel looked down at his hands, trembling. He wanted to explain, but every word carried a risk. The story he had been running from wasn't a single incident. It was a chain of events. Mistakes layered over mistakes. People who had disappeared quietly. Messages that had never reached him. Shadows of threats he had ignored, hoping distance would keep him safe. Outside the room. He imagined his life moving on without him. Streets he had walked, cafes he had sat in, pretending to be ordinary. Offices where he had worked quietly, friends who thought they knew him, they were all illusions. Daniel realized. The reality was danger. Waiting patiently, watching every move he made, keeping track of every step. Kareem broke the silence. We're going to need to investigate the gap. We'll be contacting agencies abroad, checking records, fingerprints, everything. This isn't just a routine check anymore. Daniel's heart sank. That gap wasn't supposed to be discovered. Not now. Not when he was so close to moving on, starting fresh. And yet, he knew, the deeper investigation wouldn't just expose the gap. It could uncover everything, every location, every contact. Every secret he had buried. He leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the night when he first realized he had to leave. It was quiet, almost peaceful at first, until the knock came at the door. A shadow in the corridor, a warning left behind. The note in his passport was written in panic, in hope, in fear, but it had been the only lifeline he had ever trusted. Kareem's words brought him back. Daniel, who do you trust? The question was simple, but it carried weight Daniel hadn't expected. Trust. He had learned the hard way that trust could be deadly. He had trusted the wrong people, followed advice he shouldn't have, and nearly paid the price. Now, he was here, cornered by the truth in his own passport, and he had no one to turn to. Outside the small room, the hum of security scanners and the shuffle of travelers continued. Daniel imagined the world moving forward, unaware of the silent storm about to erupt inside this terminal. Every step he had taken, every border crossed, every alias used each had led to this moment. And yet, he was still trapped in the uncertainty of what would come next. Kareem seemed to sense the storm inside Daniel. Look, he said, softer this time. I'm not your enemy, but I need answers. And the sooner we get them, the sooner this situation doesn't become worse. Daniel swallowed again. He wanted to believe Kareem. Part of him wanted to spill everything, to lay the truth bare and let someone else carry the burden. But another part, stronger, scared, kept him silent. Because the truth wasn't just dangerous. It was explosive. And once released, it could change everything for him. And maybe even for people he had tried to protect. The room fell silent once more. Daniel could hear the guard shifting near the door. He could hear his own heartbeat, each thump echoing like a warning bell. He imagined the note in his passport, the faded ink revealing secrets, pieces of a life that hadn't been his own, or maybe a life he had never fully lived. He didn't know how much time had passed when the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Kareem. It was a second officer, younger, with a tablet in hand, looking both curious and cautious. Sir, the officer said, we've received some additional data, some unexpected entries in your travel logs. We need to verify them before proceeding. Daniel's pulse spiked. Unexpected entries. That could only mean one thing. Someone else had been tracking him. Someone had left traces, perhaps intentionally, or maybe unknowingly. Either way, It meant the past he had tried to hide was slowly uncovering itself. Asterisk, he looked up at the officer, then at Kareem. The two of them represented everything he had feared: official scrutiny, authority, exposure, but also a small glimmer of potential understanding. Could they help? Could they see him not as a suspect, but as a man running from shadows? Asterisk, the second officer motioned for Daniel to stand. We need to go through these entries together, he said. Asterisk, Daniel hesitated, feeling the weight of every decision he had made pressing down. His mind raced through possibilities. Each choice now could change everything: his freedom, his safety, his life. And yet, he knew he couldn't run anymore. Not tonight. Asterisk, as he stepped toward the officers, he realized the true conflict wasn't just with the authorities. It was with the past, with the consequences of the life he had tried to erase, and the shadows that had been following him quietly, patiently, for years. Asterisk, because one thing was clear: crossing quietly was never enough. Not when the truth was waiting to catch up. Not when someone had left a warning in ink, invisible, yet impossible to ignore. Asterisk, Daniel took a deep breath and followed the officers into the hallway, each step echoing with uncertainty. The next moments would reveal more than just records or passport details. They would reveal the web of danger he had lived in for years, the network of secrets he had tried to escape, and the real threat that had been following him silently, across borders, across countries, across time itself. Asterisk, and, as the door closed behind them, Daniel realized that the quiet crossing he had planned so carefully was gone. The truth in his passport had awakened something far bigger than him, far more dangerous, and far closer than he could have imagined. Asterisk. Daniel walked through the narrow corridor, flanked by the two officers, feeling each step like it was echoing in the chamber of his own fear. Every sound outside, the distant hum of airport machinery, footsteps of travelers, muffled announcements, was muted by the storm in his mind. He had always been careful, meticulous, leaving no trail. And yet, here he was, cornered, with someone holding his past in their hands. The thought made his chest tighten. Asterisk, the younger officer held the tablet, scrolling through lines of travel entries. These entries, they aren't just normal records, he said quietly. Some of them don't match any official data. It's like someone tried to manipulate your travel history, but traces remain. Asterisk, Daniel's heart skipped. That manipulation wasn't random, it was deliberate. Someone had been following him. Someone who knew enough about his movements to leave breadcrumbs, yet careful enough to stay invisible. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain calm. Asterisk, Kareem looked over the tablet, his expression unreadable. It's like a puzzle, he said. All these entries lead somewhere, but we're missing the key. Daniel, if you cooperate, maybe we can figure this out before it escalates further. Asterisk, Daniel hesitated. Could he trust them? Could he even risk speaking the truth about the people he had tried to protect, about the networks he had avoided? One word could unravel everything. One wrong phrase, and the careful silence he had built his life on could vanish. Asterisk, he took a deep breath. Some of these, I don't recognize, he said cautiously. I've never traveled to those places on the dates listed, but someone must have used my identity. Asterisk, the young officer looked surprised. Used your identity? How? That's impossible unless someone forged documents, crossed borders illegally. Asterisk, Daniel shook his head. No, they weren't just crossing borders. They were sending a message, making sure I couldn't disappear completely. They wanted me to see it eventually. Asterisk, Kareem raised an eyebrow. And who is they? Asterisk, Daniel didn't answer. He had learned long ago that naming names could be dangerous. Some people weren't meant to be mentioned, not even in a room like this, surrounded by authority. And yet, the weight of the secret pressed on him. Every entry, every manipulated record, every trace was part of a plan, part of a hunt he had never fully understood. Asterisk, the younger officer spoke again. Sir, we've cross-referenced these locations with international databases. Some of them are tied to surveillance footage, hotel check-ins, vehicle records. It seems like someone is tracking you methodically. And Daniel, some of these places are linked to dangerous networks, people who wouldn't hesitate to harm you if they had the chance. Asterisk, Daniel's stomach dropped. That was the truth he had been avoiding. Not just officials, not just border checks, but people who had reason to hunt him, people who were patient, methodical, and merciless. The realization made his palms sweat. Asterisk, he swallowed hard. I never wanted anyone to get involved, he whispered. I thought, moving quietly, keeping a low profile, would be enough. Asterisk, Kareem leaned back slightly. Quietly is no longer enough. The moment someone notices discrepancies in your passport, the moment they trace these entries, it triggers attention. And Daniel, attention can be dangerous. Asterisk, the words hung heavy in the room. Daniel felt trapped between fear and the rising realization that the danger he had run from for years was closer than ever. He wanted to run, to vanish, but every exit he had once known now seemed blocked. Asterisk, suddenly, the tablet buzzed. The younger officer's eyes widened. We've got a live alert, he said. Someone just attempted to use your identity in another city. Right now. Asterisk, Daniel's heart raced. What? How? Who? Asterisk, we don't know yet, the officer said, but the pattern is consistent. It's like a warning. They're telling you, we're watching, we know where you are, and they're closer than you think. Asterisk Daniel felt sweat trickling down his temple. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. The note in his passport, the manipulated entries, the unknown observer, all connected. And now, after years of careful hiding, the hunter had revealed themselves. Asterisk Kareem's tone sharpened. Daniel, listen to me. You need to stay alert. One wrong move, one attempt to flee, and they will know you're vulnerable. Whoever is behind this is not interested in mistakes. They're patient, intelligent, and dangerous. Asterisk Daniel nodded, though his body trembled. He had been prepared to face authorities, officials, questions, but not this. Not the realization that someone had been orchestrating his life like a shadow, always one step ahead. Every plan he had made, every alias, every crossing, they had been watching. Asterisk, he thought of the note again, the invisible message left for him years ago. Whoever wrote it had known this moment would come. Whoever wrote it had known he would be caught between official scrutiny and the unknown threat. And Daniel realized something chilling. Escaping quietly hadn't just failed. It had been the plan all along to drive him here, to this exact moment, under the eyes of people who could track him and those who wanted him exposed. Asterisk, the younger officer glanced at Kareem, then back at Daniel. We can trace the latest attempt, he said, but it's risky. Whoever is doing this, they're smart, and they won't hesitate if they suspect we're onto them. Asterisk Daniel clenched his fists. Then what do we do? He asked, voice trembling slightly. Asterisk, Kareem's gaze hardened. We wait, we watch, and we prepare, because tonight, someone will make the next move, and when they do, you'll have to be ready. Every choice matters now. Daniel, one slip, and it's not just your freedom at risk, it could be your life. Asterisk, Daniel felt the gravity of the words sinking in. His life, carefully constructed from secrecy and caution, was collapsing. Every plan, every attempt to remain invisible, had failed. The envelope containing his passport, the note, the mysterious travel entries, they were all pieces of a puzzle that someone else was controlling, and the realization made the fear in his chest rise to suffocating heights. Asterisk, he thought of the cities he had crossed, the hotel rooms he had slept in, the moments of quiet relief he had stolen from the world. They all seemed so fragile now. Every small decision, every step forward, had been observed, manipulated, and anticipated. Asterisk, and then the tablet buzzed again. Another alert, another trace. Daniel's pulse pounded as he realized the hunter was closer than ever. The chase wasn't over. It had only just begun. Asterisk, Kareem's voice broke through his thoughts. Daniel, you need to understand something. Whoever is behind this knows you better than you know yourself. They've watched, tracked, and anticipated every move. And they're patient. They're waiting for the perfect moment to act. Asterisk, Daniel's mind raced. Every scenario he had imagined now seemed too simple. Every escape route too obvious. He had planned for border checks, scrutiny, official suspicion, but never for this silent, invisible enemy controlling his life from the shadows. Asterisk, the room grew colder. Time seemed to stretch. Every tick of the clock was louder than the last. Daniel realized that tonight, nothing would be simple, nothing would be safe. Every move, every word, every thought could change everything. Asterisk, and as the officers prepared to monitor the next trace, Daniel understood the horrifying truth. Crossing quietly had never been the goal. Surviving the truth in his passport, the network tracking him, and the shadow that had been following for years. That was the real challenge. Asterisk, the room was silent except for the faint hum of electronics and the tension between three people who now knew the stakes were higher than ever. Daniel's heart pounded, his hands shook, and his mind raced. Somewhere, in the distance, the invisible enemy was making a move, and he would have to face it soon. Asterisk, the calm before the storm was over. The next moments would decide everything, though Daniel had no idea how high the cost would be. Every shadow, every record, every whisper of the past had led to this. And now, the final confrontation, the one he had feared for years, was approaching, closer with every heartbeat. Asterisk. Daniel's mind was racing faster than ever as he sat in the sterile room, the tablet glowing softly between the officers. He could feel his pulse in his temples, his hands trembling slightly. He had been cornered before, questioned before, chased before, but something about tonight was different. Something about these alerts, the traces, the manipulated travel records, and that cryptic note in his passport. It all felt like a trap he hadn't fully understood. Asterisk, the younger officer scrolled rapidly through the tablet. His brow furrowed. Sir, we're seeing something new, he said quietly. Someone just accessed one of your financial accounts from a location that doesn't exist, or at least isn't registered in any system. And Daniel, the access is live. Right now. Asterisk, Daniel froze. A chill ran down his spine. He had hidden accounts, encrypted transfers, financial shadows meant to keep him invisible. How could anyone have found them? And why were they accessing them at this precise moment? Asterisk, Kareem leaned closer, eyes sharp. This is not random. he said. Someone is trying to provoke a reaction, or test how much you know, or how far you're willing to go. Asterisk Daniel shook his head. I don't understand. I've been careful. I've avoided connections. He trailed off, realizing that no amount of caution had been enough. The digital footprints, the manipulated records, and now, the financial access, all of it suggested someone had been planning this for years. Waiting for the exact moment to strike, asterisk suddenly. The tablet buzzed again. This time, it wasn't just an alert, it was a video feed. Daniel's stomach sank as he saw a camera angle he recognized immediately. The interior of a hotel he had stayed in months ago. One of the very few safe places he had trusted. And then he saw Ida figure moving quietly inside the room, rifling through belongings, scanning papers, touching surfaces. As if looking for something specific. Asterisk Daniel's breath caught. Who is that? He whispered. Asterisk Kareem's jaw tightened. We don't know yet. But whoever it is, they have access we didn't expect. And they're not just watching. They're searching for something. Asterisk Daniel's mind raced. That hotel had been a sanctuary. A place where he believed he could hide from the shadows. And now, someone had been inside. Someone who knew him intimately enough to find it. Asterisk the young officer tapped the tablet. And there's more. This figure isn't alone. We traced a secondary signal, a device nearby that shouldn't exist in any network. It's broadcasting data, feeding it somewhere. Someone's watching both you and your past movements. In real time, asterisk Daniel's chest tightened. Real time. Someone was not just following his past, they were controlling his present. Every careful step, every attempt to cross quietly, every identity he had assumed, it was all under observation. Asterisk, he glanced at Kareem. So, all these alerts, the passport note, the manipulated travel entries. It's connected. Asterisk Kareem nodded slowly. Yes, whoever is behind this is orchestrating everything. You thought you were hiding, but hiding doesn't work when the hunter is 2 steps ahead. Asterisk Daniel's hands trembled, not just from fear but from anger. He had spent years avoiding capture, avoiding mistakes, avoiding attention. And yet, here he was trapped by invisible forces he hadn't even known existed. Asterisk the young officer looked up from the tablet again, hesitation in his voice. Sir, there's something else. We traced a third signal. It's not just financial accounts or hotel cameras. Someone has logged into a personal device of yours. An old device, one you thought was destroyed years ago. And Daniel, it's still active. Someone can see you through it right now. Asterisk Daniel's stomach dropped. The device, the one he had buried and erased every trace of, he had believed it was gone, that the past it contained was safe. But someone had found it. Someone had waited. And now, they had leverage he hadn't anticipated. Asterisk Kareem's eyes were sharp, almost sympathetic, but there was no softening the reality. This changes everything. Whoever is behind this isn't just after information, they're playing a game. They know your history, they know your fears, and they're testing how far you'll go to protect yourself. Asterisk Daniel leaned back, his mind spinning. The first wave of conflict had been the passport, the note, the manipulated records, the alerts, but this new twist, the live access to his hidden device, the ongoing surveillance, the figure in the hotel, everything escalated the stakes. The past and present were colliding in a way he hadn't prepared for. Asterisk, a sudden thought struck him, cold and sharp. If the person watching knew about the hidden device, about the financial accounts, about his movements, maybe they knew more. Maybe they knew the very places he intended to escape to, the safe zones he had trusted, the allies he thought were out of reach. Asterisk Kareem's voice cut through the spiraling thoughts. Daniel, we need to plan, but carefully. Any reaction you make can trigger a move from them. And judging by the signals, the network behind this is sophisticated, intelligent, and patient. They're waiting for a crack. They're waiting for you to slip. Asterisk Daniel's hands clenched. He had never been more aware of the fragility of his position. Every choice, every movement, could now trigger a chain reaction he couldn't control. The hunter wasn't just tracking him, they were anticipating him, predicting him, manipulating events to corner him further. Asterisk the tablet buzzed again. Another notification. Daniel glanced at it, and his stomach sank deeper. It wasn't just one alert. Multiple feeds, multiple accesses, multiple signals from places he had thought were forgotten. Someone was reconstructing his entire life, piece by piece, and doing it with terrifying precision. Asterisk Daniel's voice was low, almost a whisper. Who would do this? Asterisk Kareem's eyes didn't leave his face. Someone who knows your past. Someone who knows what you fear most. And Daniel, someone who's not afraid to make you face it. Asterisk, the words hung in the room like a storm waiting to break. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities, former associates he had trusted, hidden enemies, shadows from the life he thought he had left behind. Whoever it was, they had orchestrated every detail perfectly. The passport alert, the manipulated travel entries, the hotel intrusion, the device access, each step had been calculated, leading him to this exact moment. Asterisk, Daniel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing down. The first conflict, the passport, the manipulated records had escalated. Now, With this second twist to live surveillance, the intrusion into his hidden device, the stakes were higher than ever. The hunter wasn't just watching, they were controlling the game, and the question he couldn't answer was simple, but terrifying. Could he survive it? Outside the sterile room, the world continued as if unaware, but inside, Daniel's life had become a ticking clock, each second bringing him closer to a confrontation he had feared for years. The calm before the storm was gone. Every shadow, every alert, every trace was a warning. The real test was coming, and Daniel knew that crossing quietly was no longer an option. The officers watched him silently, aware that the next move, whether from Daniel or the hunter, could change everything. The room was heavy with anticipation, tension stretching to its limit. Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears as he realized the danger wasn't just external, it was inside his life, inside every choice he had ever made. And now, the shadows had found him. And somewhere, out there, the figure watching, manipulating, and orchestrating events moved closer, ready to reveal secrets, force decisions, and push Daniel toward a confrontation that could change everything he had fought to protect. Daniel's heart was racing as he followed the officers down the dimly lit corridor. Every step felt heavier than the last, each one echoing like a countdown to something he couldn't yet imagine. The alerts, the manipulated entries, the hidden device, the live surveillance, they had all led to this moment. Somewhere ahead, the shadow that had haunted him for years was waiting. They entered a secured control room. Screens lined the walls, each showing feeds from airports, hotels, and financial systems. The younger officer quickly tapped on one screen, bringing up a live feed from the hotel room Daniel had stayed in months ago. And there it was, the figure, moving with precision, rifling through belongings. Daniel's breath caught. He knew that room better than anyone. Whoever was inside had to know him intimately. He had hidden nothing in that room he hadn't thought was secure. And yet, the figure moved like they belonged, pulling out a small, unmarked envelope. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. Kareem noticed his reaction. "Daniel, do you recognize them?" Daniel shook his head slowly. I can't tell. But whoever it is, they're connected to the note. They've been orchestrating this from the start. Suddenly, the live feed changed. Another camera showed the hotel lobby. A second figure appeared, someone Daniel didn't recognize, moving with a calm but deliberate pace. Then, to his horror, the first figure picked up a small device, a phone, and sent a message that instantly triggered multiple alerts across every trace, every system monitoring his identity. It's them, Daniel whispered, the ones behind the manipulated entries, the alerts, the warnings. Kareem leaned closer to the screen. They're not just watching, they're controlling everything. Every step you've taken, every record you've left, it's all been part of their plan. Daniel swallowed hard. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He had never been running from authorities, or even from mistakes. He had been running from someone who knew him better than he knew himself. Someone who had controlled pieces of his life without ever revealing themselves. And now, the confrontation was unavoidable. The younger officer pointed at the screen. They're heading out of the hotel, moving somewhere else. Daniel, they know you're here. Daniel's mind raced. He had only one chance. Every plan he had relied on, every strategy to stay invisible, had to be executed now. One misstep could mean exposure or worse. "We have to intercept them," he said, voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. Kareem nodded. "Agreed, but carefully. One wrong move, and they'll vanish again. Or worse." They moved quickly, using the digital feeds to track the figures through city streets. Every turn, every corner, every movement was monitored. Daniel felt his pulse race, knowing that the people behind this had orchestrated everything to lead him here. And now, the trap was almost complete. Suddenly, the first figure stopped, turned, and looked directly at a surveillance camera. Daniel froze. His blood ran cold. How could they know? How could they see him, even through the screen? And then it hit him. This wasn't just a hunter. It was someone who had been controlling his life, his movements, his fears, from the shadows, manipulating him all along. The figure moved again, and Daniel's stomach dropped. They were heading toward a warehouse on the edge of the city, a place he had passed countless times but never entered. Kareem and the younger officer exchanged a glance. "This is it," Kareem said quietly. "This is where it ends." Daniel's breath caught as they approached the warehouse. He could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of confrontation building with every step. And then, the door opened. Inside, the first figure waited, and Daniel gasped. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone he had trusted years ago, someone he had believed was gone, someone he had hidden secrets from, secrets that had now resurfaced in the most dangerous way possible. The person stepped forward slowly. "Daniel," they said, voice calm but sharp, "you should have never crossed quietly. You should have known the truth would catch up." Daniel's chest tightened. "Why?" he asked, voice barely audible. "Why, all of this?" Asterisk, the figure smiled faintly, because the truth in your passport wasn't just a warning. It was a test, to see if you could survive the life you chose, to see if you were ready to face what's real. Asterisk Kareem and the younger officer moved closer, but the figure raised a hand. Not yet, they said. This is between him and me. Asterisk Daniel felt fear, anger, and confusion crash over him. The past he had run from, the hidden device, the alerts, the manipulated travel entries, they had all been leading to this confrontation. Every secret, every choice, every moment of hiding had built toward this point. Asterisk the figure stepped closer, holding a small envelope, the same one seen in the hotel. Everything you've tried to bury, everything you've tried to hide, it's all here, they said, placing it carefully on a table. And now, you have a choice. Face it or keep running. But running ends tonight. Asterisk Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for the envelope. The weight of his life, his secrets, and the truth pressed down like never before. And then, just as he opened it, the figure's face changed. Calmness melted into a faint, almost sorrowful smile. Asterisk, I'm not your enemy, they whispered. But the real danger isn't me. It's what you've been running from all these years. And it's closer than you think. Asterisk, Daniel's breath caught. He looked up, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. Before he could speak, the second figure from the hotel appeared behind the first, stepping out from the shadows. Daniel froze. They were not alone. Asterisk, the room went silent. Every secret, every warning, every manipulated entry, all of it had led to this moment. And Daniel realized the terrifying truth. The conflict wasn't just about identity, passports, or surveillance. It was about the choices he had made, the people he trusted, and the shadows of his own past. Asterisk, then the first figure spoke again, voice low and deliberate. Daniel, the story isn't over yet. There's one final truth you need to see. One last twist. Asterisk, Daniel's pulse thundered. The envelope in his hands felt heavier than ever. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every heartbeat, every second, carried the weight of years spent running, hiding, and surviving. Asterisk, and then, the figure handed him a photograph. One Daniel had never seen before. A photograph that changed everything he believed about his past, his identity, and the people he thought he knew. Asterisk, he stared at it, stunned. The truth, more shocking than he could imagine, stared back at him. Asterisk, and in that moment, Daniel realized, the quiet crossing, the manipulated records, the hidden device, they had all been just the beginning. The real story, the story that would define his life, was only now unfolding. Asterisk. Daniel stared at the photograph in his hands, his fingers trembling. It was a picture of a young child himself, though he didn't recognize the exact moment. Another figure, someone he had trusted deeply years ago. His chest tightened as memories, half forgotten and buried, surfaced all at once. This was the connection he hadn't realized existed. The missing piece that explained everything, the note in the passport, the manipulated travel entries, the alerts, the hidden device. Someone had been protecting him, or testing him, from the shadows all along. Asterisk, the first figure stepped closer. You've spent years running, Daniel, thinking the danger was outside. But the truth is, the most dangerous part has always been the unknown within your own life, your own choices. Everything we did, the alerts, the messages, the hidden traces, it was to bring you here, to prepare you for what comes next. Asterisk, Daniel swallowed hard. Prepare me, for what? Asterisk, for yourself, the figure said softly. You've lived in fear of being caught, being exposed. But the life you've built, it was always fragile because you didn't confront the truth. Now you can. You have the choice to accept it or keep running. Asterisk, Kareem and the younger officer exchanged glances, understanding the gravity of the moment. They had been intermediaries, observers, but Daniel's story was personal. A labyrinth of past secrets, hidden threats, and choices made under pressure. The resolution wasn't about law enforcement. It was about Daniel confronting his own life. Asterisk, Daniel looked down at the envelope. Inside were documents, photographs, and letters he didn't remember writing. They painted a full picture of his past, every place he had been, every alias he had used, every decision made to survive. And alongside the facts, there were letters from someone who had always cared, someone who had silently guided him, warning him of dangers he hadn't yet understood. Asterisk, he realized then that the so-called hunter had never been his enemy. They had been waiting for him to be ready, to face the truth without panic, without running. The revelation was overwhelming. The tension he had carried for years, the constant fear of being exposed, was finally giving way to clarity. Asterisk, why now? Daniel asked. His voice was low but steady, trembling with a mix of relief and disbelief. Asterisk, because you were ready, the figure replied. The moment you crossed quietly was never the problem. The problem was ignoring the signs, thinking you could escape reality. You've seen what happens when the truth is left unacknowledged. You've been tested, Daniel, but now the test is over. Asterisk, Daniel's mind raced through everything, the passport, the alerts, the hidden device, the manipulated entries. Each had seemed like a threat, a trap, a danger from unseen enemies. But now he understood. Each was a stepping stone, a part of the larger truth guiding him to this moment of clarity. Asterisk, he took a deep breath, feeling a sense of release wash over him. The fear, the tension, the suspenseful of it was finally giving way to understanding. He looked at the photograph again, recognizing the face of the person beside him. It was someone who had silently influenced his path, protected him, and now guided him toward resolution. Kareem spoke softly. Daniel, it seems you've uncovered the real story. The threats, the alerts, they were never about punishment. They were about survival, learning, and ultimately, confronting your own choices. Daniel nodded slowly. The officers had been tools, guides, but the resolution was his own. He realized the past could no longer control him. He could acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward. The weight of years of fear lifted slightly, replaced by clarity and cautious hope. The younger officer tapped the tablet. All the anomalies have been traced, he said. The manipulated entries, the financial alerts, the device access they're contained. Whoever orchestrated this, whoever guided it, they've stepped back. The immediate danger has passed. Daniel exhaled, a long, steady breath. It wasn't freedom in the traditional sense. He was still responsible for his choices, still navigating the consequences of past decisions. But for the first time in years, he felt like he could face the world without the shadow of constant fear looming over him. The first figure handed him a final letter. Read this when you're ready, they said. It will explain the last pieces. Everything you've been wondering, everything you've been afraid to confront, but take your time. Understanding comes with reflection, not panic. Daniel nodded, carefully placing the envelope in his bag. He realized that life wasn't about crossing quietly anymore. It wasn't about hiding from the past or manipulating the present. It was about acknowledging every truth, every mistake, every choice, and using them to move forward with purpose. As he left the warehouse with Kareem and the younger officer, Daniel glanced back one last time. The shadow that had dominated his life for years, the figure who had guided, watched, and tested him stood at the doorway. Their expression was calm, almost approving. It was a quiet acknowledgement. The storm had passed, but the lessons remained. Outside, the city was alive with motion, travelers, lights, vehicles. Life continued as usual, oblivious to the tense story that had unfolded in a hidden warehouse. Daniel felt the weight of his experiences settling, a mix of relief and lingering caution. He knew he couldn't erase the past, but he could control how he moved forward. He turned to Kareem. Thank you, he said simply, for everything, for seeing the story for what it really was. Kareem nodded. You did the hard part yourself, Daniel. Confronting the truth is never easy, but it's the only way to survive fully, to live without fear of the shadows behind you. The younger officer smiled faintly. And sometimes, the greatest danger isn't the world outside, it's the uncertainty inside your own life. But you've faced it. That counts for more than you know. Daniel nodded again, a quiet determination settling within him. The alerts, the hidden devices, the manipulated entries, they had all been part of a story he didn't fully understand until now. But understanding came at a cost. Reflection, courage, and the willingness to face what he had always avoided. As he walked into the evening light, leaving the warehouse behind, Daniel felt a sense of closure. The suspense, the fear, the tension of it, had led to this moment of realization. He knew life would always hold challenges, that hidden threats and secrets could emerge. But he also knew something more important. The past could guide him, but it would no longer control him. For the first time in years, Daniel felt truly seen, not by authorities, not by hidden hunters, but by the truth itself. And with that awareness came freedom, the kind that wasn't about escaping quietly, but about facing every choice, every secret, every fear. With courage, he paused at the edge of the street, taking in the city around him. The lights, the sounds, the movement, they were reminders that life continues, that every story has twists, conflicts, and suspense. And while some mysteries remain, the real lesson was clear. The truth, no matter how hidden, has a way of finding you. And when it does, you can either run, or you can face it. Daniel smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the past lifting. The story that began with a quiet crossing, a passport note, and manipulated records had reached its end, not with destruction, but with understanding. The suspense, the tension, the conflict all resolved, leaving behind a clear reflection. Survival isn't about hiding. It's about confronting your life with honesty, courage, and awareness. And as he walked into the night, Daniel knew one final truth. The quiet crossings are never truly safe, but facing the truth, that is the only way to live free.